A woman in a suit stands before a prison cell, looking up at a silver-haired man suspended in chains. She calls out to him with a look of desperation, addressing him as Akihito. Akihito's eyes glow as he gives a sinister smile, announcing that it is time for school. The scene shifts to the graffiti-covered exterior of Kayome High School. Inside the school grounds, a crowd of students forms a circle, demanding two boys fight to the death. The onlookers grow impatient, threatening the combatants to stop hesitating and start brawling. One of the chosen fighters, a boy with glasses, trembles in fear, wondering how he got into this situation. His opponent, a long-haired student, looks equally terrified as he raises his fists. With a desperate cry, the long-haired student lunges forward to attack. But his opponent reacts first, landing a brutal punch that connects squarely with his face. The crowd roars with approval, demanding more violence. He unleashes a flurry of blows as the onlookers shout for a killing strike. His opponent collapses to the ground, bloodied and in agony. The victor stands over the defeated student, all while a large, blond man watches from the steps, questioning how long this will go on. He sits silently, an imposing figure observing the chaos. A student announces the winner's name is Hyorogari. The crowd erupts with mixed reactions to the outcome. Hyorogari looks on in disbelief, realizing he actually did it. The blond man shifts his weight, expressing his disappointment. The defeated student is then pelted with cans and garbage by the jeering crowd. A hand places a sign on the defeated student, telling him he needs to get tougher. He lies on the ground in tears, branded as the day's official punching bag. The scene flashes back, revealing the daily chaos inside a Kayome High classroom. Here, students are forced to fight, and one lands a devastating blow to another's gut. The victim stumbles back against the lockers, clutching his stomach in agony. A student with an undercut smirks, disqualifying the loser and calling for the next challenger. Elsewhere, a larger bully confronts a student named Yuki, angry that he lost a bet placed on him. Without warning, he delivers a vicious punch to Yuki's stomach. As Yuki collapses, an onlooker taunts him for being so close to winning. A new student in a red hoodie cracks his knuckles, complaining that everyone is too slow. The student in the red hoodie tells everyone to watch as Yuki trembles on the floor. He then delivers a gut-wrenching blow, forcing Yuki to vomit. The student, now identified as Suzuki, celebrates his victory in the first vomit contest. But the larger bully who bet on Yuki approaches, demanding he hand over his wallet as compensation. Yuki looks up confused. The bully states that he must take responsibility for losing. He snatches the wallet from Yuki's hand. Upon opening it, he finds nothing but coupons, expressing his disgust. Yuki meekly explains that was all he had for lunch. In response, the bully grinds Yuki's head into the floor with his foot. The bully, now called Iko-chan, mockingly tells Yuki to eat his own vomit to save on food costs. Lying on the floor, Yuki reaches his breaking point, unable to endure a life ruled by violence. He questions why he must be tormented by such selfish punks. In his despair, he silently wishes for anyone to punish them. He doesn't care if it's a villain or even a lunatic. As his desperate plea fills his mind, the classroom door suddenly slams open. Iko-chan turns around, annoyed by the interruption. His eyes widen in shock. A blonde student flies through the air, bringing his heel down in a powerful axe kick. The kick connects squarely with Iko-chan's skull, knocking him out instantly. The blonde student follows through, smashing Tanaka's head into the wooden floor with brutal force. He stands up, completely unfazed by the violence he just committed. The other bullies are left speechless. They cry out in shock, realizing their leader, Tanaka, has been taken down. The newcomer pulls out his phone, seemingly confirming his target's name. A wanted app on his screen registers the victory, but he seems disappointed to have only earned 1 point. Suzuki and his cronies step forward, demanding to know the identity of this intruder. The blonde student turns to face them with a confident smirk. He cheerfully introduces himself as Akihito, the new transfer student. From the floor, Yuki looks on in absolute astonishment. Enraged by Akihito's smug demeanor, Suzuki grips a nearby chair. He hurls it directly at the transfer student, demanding to know who he thinks he is. Akihito simply scratches his neck, unconcerned. From the floor, Yuki cries out a desperate warning. But Akihito effortlessly dodges the projectile with a predatory grin. Another one of Suzuki's cronies tells him to behave. The crony squares up, ready to enforce his command. Akihito, however, moves first, delivering a vicious kick between the legs. The bully crumples in agony as the other students watch in stunned silence. He then casually counts his fallen opponents, remarking that a total of 25 points is quite a bargain. Akihito licks the blood from his knuckles, curious to see how this works. His eyes glow as he relishes what he calls the taste of their sins. Yuki is utterly bewildered. He wonders just who this transfer student truly is. The scene transitions to a towering skyscraper in the heart of the city. Inside, a woman briefs a group of executives on an approved project, one she believes will drastically reduce juvenile crime. One of the men erupts in anger, calling the system insane and ridiculous. Another executive echoes the sentiment, questioning the sanity of their superiors. The woman calmly explains the project's mechanics. Juvenile convicts are transferred to problem schools to resolve internal issues in exchange for reduced sentences. Back at Kayome High, Akihito sits calmly amidst the carnage he created, a living embodiment of this new system, known as the Sinner Transfer Student. Amidst the wreckage, Akihito fumbles with his phone, trying to figure out the camera. He then spots Yuki and demands his assistance. Yuki points to himself in disbelief. He knows he should fear this violent newcomer, but he can't deny that Akihito saved him. Hesitantly, Yuki shows him how to take a picture, earning a quick thanks from the transfer student. Akihito then decides Yuki should join him in the photo. He grabs the terrified boy's arm, pulling him closer. Unsure of what else to do, Yuki aims the camera as Akihito strikes a peace sign. The resulting selfie captures their victory pose over the unconscious bodies, a moment Akihito finds exhilarating. He then turns his attention to a piece of paper. Akihito questions the sign Yuki is holding, asking why he is wearing it. The concept of fight gambling immediately captures his attention. Yuki explains that the third-year Mainta brothers force weaker students to fight for their own profit. Akihito turns, acknowledging how messed up the system is. Yuki looks on, seeking confirmation that the transfer student agrees with him. But to his shock, Akihito declares the idea is awesome, a perfect way to bet on oneself and win big. Yuki is horrified by this unexpected reaction. Akihito checks his phone, seeing the Mainta brothers are worth a total of 40 points, and explains that each point reduces his sentence. The mention of a sentence leaves Yuki utterly confused. Akihito then reveals the truth with a sharp-toothed grin, proudly identifying himself as a sinner. Meanwhile, the large blonde man from before sits patiently on the school steps, holding a metal bat. Suzuki and his beaten cronies rush towards him, apologizing profusely for their tardiness. Without a word, the man swings his bat directly into Suzuki's gut. The metal pipe connects with brutal force. He calmly reminds Suzuki that tardiness is forbidden. Another student asks what happened to their faces, and Suzuki fearfully explains it was the new transfer student. The leader, Mainta, raises an eyebrow at the mention of a transfer student. One of the cronies panics, warning that the newcomer is dangerously strong, perhaps even stronger than Mainta. In response, Mainta swings his bat again, smashing it across the student's face for his insolence. The student collapses to the ground, bleeding, as Suzuki watches in absolute horror. Mainta gets his underling's attention with a single word. He then gives a simple command: bring the transfer student to him immediately. Elsewhere, Akihito and Yuki arrive at the fighting grounds. They find the same chaotic scene as before, with two students forced to fight in a circle. The crowd screams for more violence, demanding the fighters show some guts. One of the combatants stands victorious over his bloodied and defeated opponent. Mainta raises the arm of the curly-haired winner, declaring his victory. He then asks the exhausted victor if he is all right. He observes the student's broken nose, noting how painful it must be. He then offers to fix it for him. Without warning, he drives his fist directly into the student's face, shattering his nose. The student cries out in agony as Mainta grins with cruel satisfaction. His underlings erupt in laughter, praising their leader Ryuji. Mainta seems pleased with his handiwork. He then mockingly asks if the new look suits him, congratulating the boy on his successful plastic surgery. From the sidelines, Yuki watches in horror, muttering that they've gone too far. Akihito, however, simply confirms his targets on his phone. The app displays the profile of Mainta Ryuji, worth a total of 10 points. He notes that 10 points isn't bad and tells Yuki to treat him to a hamburger after he wins. Yuki is left completely stunned by Akihito's casual confidence. Mainta Ryuji looks around, ready to select the next opponent. From the crowd, Akihito cheerfully raises his hand, volunteering to fight. Mainta turns, noting that he doesn't recognize the newcomer's face. Suzuki and his cronies panic, identifying Akihito as the transfer student who attacked them. The gang stares down the lone challenger. A look of realization crosses Mainta's face. He accepts the challenge, and Akihito celebrates with excitement. Mainta then begins to select an opponent for the transfer student. Akihito interrupts, asking if he can choose his own fight. He then points directly at Mainta Ryuji, challenging the leader himself. Mainta Ryuji is momentarily stunned by the direct challenge. His underlings erupt in laughter, convinced the newcomer is already dead. Mainta reminds Akihito that he is the strongest fighter in the school, asking if he still wants to proceed. Akihito simply states that it doesn't matter, as beating him will be all the same. The gang leader's expression darkens with rage. He then places a metal bucket on the ground. Mainta announces to the crowd that this will be a deathmatch, demanding they hand over their cash. The students eagerly throw their money into the bucket, betting on the outcome. He then turns back to Akihito, clarifying that the only one dying will be him. The two combatants stand face to face, ready for the fight to begin. Mainta pulls out a pair of brass knuckles, mocking Akihito's collar and vowing to make him his pet. Akihito looks on in surprise, recognizing the weapon. A student referee officially starts the match. Mainta immediately lunges forward, throwing a vicious punch with the armed fist. But Akihito narrowly dodges the blow. The onlookers are certain the transfer student is finished, knowing Mainta is now serious. Akihito questions the fairness of using a weapon. Mainta smirks, clarifying that weapons were never banned. He explains that in a deathmatch, the only rule is to fight until one of them is dead. He lets out a ferocious battle cry. Mainta's brass-knuckled fist connects squarely with Akihito's jaw. The transfer student grunts in pain, blood spraying from his mouth. Mainta presses his advantage, forcing Akihito to stumble backward. The onlookers jeer, telling the transfer student to stop running away. Mainta then scoops up a handful of gravel from the ground. He hurls it directly into Akihito's face. Blood trickles down his nose, but Akihito's gaze remains unbroken. Mainta smirks, admiring the blood on his weapon. The crowd taunts him, questioning where his earlier confidence has gone. From the sidelines, Yuki looks on in utter disbelief and fear. Mainta reminds him that it is too late to give up, as a deathmatch only ends with a fatality. His underlings laugh, mockingly pitying the transfer student's fate. The crowd agrees it was reckless to challenge one of the infamous Mainta brothers. Mainta crouches before the kneeling Akihito, contemplating how to end the fight. He vows to make Akihito's death a slow and painful one for his defiance. But before he can act, Akihito's fist slams into his face. Mainta stumbles back in confusion, touching the new wound on his head. Akihito strikes again, this time with a rock clutched in his fist, shattering Mainta's composure. Yuki watches in stunned silence. The mighty gang leader collapses to the ground, defeated. He laughs, holding the blood-soaked cinder block he used as a weapon. With a sadistic grin, he compliments his own brutal strike. He raises the block high, preparing to deliver another devastating blow. Mainta stares up in terror, questioning the transfer student's intentions. Akihito mockingly asks for confirmation that weapons are indeed allowed. As Mainta cries out in fear, Akihito brings the weapon down with a look of pure ecstasy. His underlings can only watch in stunned disbelief. The block connects again and again, smashing Mainta's skull against the pavement. Yuki whispers the transfer student's name in utter shock. The once feared gang leader desperately tries to surrender, admitting his defeat. The cronies are stunned, unable to process their leader's surrender. But Akihito coldly rejects his plea for mercy. Mainta tearfully questions his decision. Akihito reminds him that the deathmatch only ends when one of them dies. The onlookers are paralyzed with fear. Mainta can only whimper as the transfer student looms over him. He brings the cinder block down once more. The crowd screams for him to stop, insisting he has already won. One of the students even tries to restrain him, questioning his murderous intent. From the sidelines, Yuki can only whisper for the violence to end. But Akihito simply grins, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, bloodthirsty joy. Yuki screams out his name, begging him to stop. The student holding him back insists that he has already won the fight. Akihito pauses, looking down at the broken gang leader. He places his foot on Mainta's head, asking if this is enough to be considered a victory. He then drops the blood-soaked cinder block to the ground. Turning to Yuki, he cheerfully flashes a peace sign and declares their victory. He throws a friendly arm around the terrified boy. Yuki flinches, noticing the blood still covering Akihito's hand. Akihito then excitedly reminds him of his promise to buy him hamburgers, much to Yuki's confusion. He dismisses Yuki's concerns, telling him not to sweat the details as he drags him away. Mainta's cronies can only stare at their fallen leader, realizing the situation is dire. They panic, understanding how messed up this is and that they need to call an ambulance fast. The crowd of students parts in fear. Suddenly, the sound of a motorcycle engine cuts through the tension. A new, imposing figure arrives, identified by the students as Ryugo. One of the underlings rushes to him, frantically explaining that the transfer student attacked his brother. Without a word, Ryugo delivers a swift kick to the student's face. He stands over the carnage, taking in the scene. The newcomer looks down at his defeated brother, Mainta Ryuji. Ryuji lies broken on the pavement as his underlings cry out his name. But Ryugo responds with contempt, grinding his foot into the subordinate's face. The other students watch in horror. He calmly smokes, declaring that weaklings deserve to lose. He then asks if this was the work of the new transfer student. With that confirmation, he reaches for a wad of cash. He throws the money into the air, ordering his punks to find the transfer student at any cost. Meanwhile, Akihito and Yuki have arrived at a local burger joint. Akihito stares at the menu with wide-eyed excitement. He marvels at all the delicious-looking options, completely oblivious to the chaos he left behind. He enthusiastically declares he wants one of everything on the menu, much to Yuki's dismay. He settles for 2 cheeseburger sets and curiously adds an order for a smile. The cashier cheerfully takes his order, He then realizes the smile was not a menu item, expressing his slight disappointment. The interaction leaves both Yuki and the employee momentarily speechless. Soon after, their food arrives on a tray. Akihito takes his first bite and is immediately overwhelmed with joy. Yuki watches in amazement, wondering if this is the first time Akihito has ever eaten a hamburger. His mind then flashes back to the brutal fight from earlier, where Akihito mercilessly smashed a man's face with a rock. He comes to the chilling realization that this transfer student is far from normal, recalling Akihito's own words that he is a criminal. Yuki cautiously asks if Akihito is truly a criminal, to which the transfer student nonchalantly agrees. This only deepens Yuki's confusion, prompting him to ask why a convict would be sent to a high school. Akihito explains that some important person wants him to fix the school's problems. He elaborates that by defeating bad guys, he can reduce his prison sentence. Yuki is left speechless, realizing the entire system is completely insane. His curiosity getting the better of him, he asks just how long Akihito's sentence is. Akihito casually reveals his sentence is 500 years, a number that leaves Yuki utterly floored. His mind races, recalling that the maximum sentence in Japan is only 30 years, with life being the most a minor can receive. He trembles in fear, demanding to know what crime Akihito could have possibly committed to earn such a sentence. But Akihito ignores the question, suddenly struck by what he calls the best idea ever. His grand idea involves sticking French fries directly into the hamburger. He then proceeds to douse the entire concoction with cola. Akihito proudly presents his creation, believing that combining tasty things only makes them better. He opens his mouth wide, ready to enjoy his masterpiece. But just as he leans in, several menacing figures armed with pipes appear outside the window. The glass suddenly shatters, sending Akihito and Yuki flying amidst the debris. The other customers in the restaurant cry out in panic. One of the thugs steps through the broken window, gripping a metal pipe. Yuki looks up from the floor, paralyzed with fear. He immediately recognizes the assailants as Ryugo Ma's lackeys. Yuki desperately tries to warn him, but Akihito is more concerned about his dropped meal. The thug in red confirms Akihito is the one who took down Ryuji, promising he won't walk away in one piece. Yuki panics, identifying the attacker as Minta Ryugo, the older brother seeking revenge, and insists they need to run. But one of the thugs shoves the end of his pipe directly into Yuki's face. He orders Yuki to move aside, telling the transfer kid to come with them. Akihito, however, ignores them completely, his attention fixed on his fallen burger as he wonders if the 3-second rule still applies. Before he can act, one of the thugs grinds the burger into the floor with his boot. Akihito erupts in absolute fury over his ruined special meal. The goons are completely bewildered by his outburst over the ruined food. His cheerful demeanor vanishes, replaced by a cold glare as he looks down at the mess. The thug mockingly suggests Akihito lick his shoe for the burger. Akihito calmly issues a lethal threat, ordering the thug to move his foot. The leader of the group scoffs, warning Akihito not to get cocky. But Akihito's hand clamps down on the thug's ankle with crushing force. The sudden display of strength leaves everyone stunned. The thug cries out in agony as his leg is twisted at an unnatural angle. Akihito rises, his rage palpable as he questions how anyone could dare step on his special burger. He then grabs another goon by the collar, slamming him against a wall. Declaring he cannot stand it, he unleashes a brutal punch to the man's face. He finishes with a devastating kick, vowing punishment for anyone who disrespects food. The thug in red begs for a moment's pause, but Akihito stomps down, expressing his hatred for such behavior. He stands victorious over the 3 unconscious goons. Yuki watches in awe, stunned by how quickly he dispatched them. His rage subsiding, Akihito kneels to retrieve his fallen meal. He sheds a single tear for the poor thing, vowing to help it pass on peacefully. He then shoves the ruined burger directly into the thug's mouth. Akihito demands to know if it's tasty, and the thug tearfully agrees. He then forces the man to drink the cola, demanding a rating and a taste test fee. The terrified cashier calls out from behind the counter. He then orders another cheeseburger set and a smile, paying with the thug's blood-stained cash. The terrified employee tearfully agrees to his request. Amidst the wreckage, Akihito joyfully declares his intention to eat his fill. Later, Akihito walks with Yuki, satisfied with the meal that was paid for with the thug's money. Yuki can only conclude that the transfer student is a truly weird guy. As they walk away, a red-haired woman in a suit watches them from a distance. She suddenly appears before them, announcing that she has finally found him. Akihito looks up in recognition. He cheerfully greets the woman, calling her Fayumi-chan. Yuki, however, is simply captivated by her appearance, wondering who she is. Yuki speculates that she might be Akihito's sister, but she quickly reveals a pair of handcuffs, restraining the transfer student. Fayumi scolds him for taking unauthorized actions, but Akihito tries to explain that Yuki was treating him to food, much to Yuki's surprise. She tells him they will talk later and begins dragging him away. As he's pulled along, Akihito cheerfully waves goodbye, trying to recall Yuki's name. Yuki gives a hesitant wave in return. He then walks home alone, feeling utterly exhausted by the day's events. But as he walks, a thought crosses his mind. He recalls the sheer, unrestrained violence Akihito unleashed on his opponents. And for the first time, a genuine smile spreads across his face. He walks with a skip in his step, admitting to himself that the day was actually fun. But his thoughts are cut short as he collides with an imposing figure. The impact sends him stumbling backward onto the pavement. The stranger offers a hand, asking if he is all right. As Yuki looks up, he is met with the sight of a massive blonde man looming over him under the full moon. A wave of fear washes over him. The man smirks, announcing that he has finally found his target. The scene then shifts to a quiet apartment building later that night. Inside, Akihito sits at a table while Fayumi prepares a meal. He impatiently bangs his utensils, demanding to know if the food is ready yet. But Fayumi informs him that he will not be receiving any dinner, much to his dismay. She explains that it is a penalty for breaking the rules. Akihito protests, insisting he worked hard and did nothing wrong. Fayumi lists his infractions, which include an unauthorized outing and damage to restaurant property. He then asks if he can finally remove the collar from his neck. Fayumi flatly denies his request, revealing the collar contains a GPS and will explode if he tries to remove it or strays too far from her. Akihito tries to argue that the outing shouldn't count, as Yuki was the one treating him to burgers. Fayumi recalls the boy he was with earlier. She asks if he forced the boy to pay, and Akihito's hesitation is all the answer she needs. With a stern look, she informs him that he will also be skipping breakfast tomorrow. Fayumi reminds him that he should be grateful to even be living in her supervised apartment. She gets his attention, preparing to explain the situation one more time. She reiterates the core concept of the Sinner transfer student system. She clarifies that the project is not just about fixing the school, but also about his own rehabilitation. Akihito casually dismisses her, stating he already heard this during his training. Fayumi closes her eyes with a sigh. She kneels down, asking if he really wants to return to his former life. Akihito looks back at her, his expression unreadable. His mind flashes back to a dark and violent memory from his childhood. The memory reflects in his eye as he quietly agrees that he does not. Fayumi then proposes a deal, much to Akihito's confusion. She holds out her pinky finger. She offers to make him hamburger steak if he goes to school the next day and defeats all his opponents. The simple promise of food instantly changes his demeanor, filling him with childlike excitement. He eagerly accepts, sealing the deal with a pinky promise. A wide, toothy grin spreads across his face. The following day, Ryugo and his gang have gathered at the school entrance. Akihito arrives, cheerfully chanting about the hamburger steak he was promised. But he stops short, sensing the tense atmosphere. He finds himself completely surrounded by Ryugo's forces. Ryugo announces that they have been waiting for the transfer student. Akihito feigns ignorance, asking for the man's identity. The man introduces himself as Ryugo Ma, stating that his little brother owes Akihito a debt. Akihito eagerly cracks his knuckles, ready to begin the fight. But Ryugo tells him to slow down, clarifying that he will not be Akihito's opponent. Instead, he gestures towards a group of students standing nearby. He explains that these students begged for the opportunity to fight him. Akihito looks down at the four chosen combatants, who nervously clench their fists. His eyes then fall upon a familiar face, recognizing Yuki among them. Akihito calls out his name, questioning what he is doing there. Akihito expresses his disbelief at the situation. He looks directly at Yuki, questioning his intent to fight. Yuki looks down, apologizing and explaining that he had no choice. The scene flashes back 12 hours earlier, revealing a group of students hanging from a bridge. They struggle to maintain their grip, their bodies dangling precariously over the water. Yuki grits his teeth, enduring the agonizing punishment. He recalls his fateful encounter with Ryugo Ma, blaming him for this predicament. As his grip begins to fail, he realizes a fall from this height could be fatal. Ryugo offers them a chance at salvation, and the students desperately agree to do anything he asks. He then gives them their one and only command, to kill the transfer student. Yuki is stunned by the impossible command. The other students realize they are being ordered to fight the transfer student. One of them panics, certain that facing Akihito is a death sentence. Ryugo simply flicks his cigarette away. He grinds the embers out just above the student's desperate grip. He then offers the boy a choice, to die now instead. Ryugo brings his foot down, crushing the student's fingers. The boy loses his hold and plummets towards the dark water below. He hits the surface with a massive splash. Yuki watches in absolute horror, his own grip beginning to fail. Ryugo applies pressure to the student's hand. He looks down at the boy, who dangles helplessly. Ryugo asks what his decision will be. Yuki realizes that to survive, he has no choice but to fight. Back in the present, Ryugo signals for the fight to begin. He taunts Akihito, asking if he can bring himself to harm his friend. Yuki stumbles forward. With a desperate cry, he and the others charge. But Akihito reacts instantly, landing a brutal punch to Yuki's face. The blow sends Yuki flying backward, his glasses shattering in the air. Yuki skids violently across the dirt, his body tumbling from the force of the blow. Without hesitation, Akihito delivers a powerful kick to the next student's gut. He follows up with a swift punch to the third combatant's jaw, and finishes the last one with a single, devastating strike to the face. In a matter of seconds, all 4 students lie defeated on the ground. Ryugo approaches, mockingly asking if the boy with glasses was Akihito's friend. Akihito pauses, seemingly considering the question. He then casually dismisses the idea, stating they were not really friends. From the ground, Yuki looks up in stunned disbelief. His shock gives way to a grim realization that such a cruel response is exactly what he should have expected from Akihito. Yuki cries out in anguish, reminding Akihito that he thought they were friends after sharing a meal together. He tearfully accuses the transfer student of betrayal for striking him. Akihito looks down at him, his expression unreadable. He then asks a simple question, wanting to know why Yuki tried to attack him. He points out that if hitting a friend is betrayal, then Yuki was the one who betrayed him first. Yuki is left utterly speechless, unable to form a response. Ryugo walks past the defeated boy, admitting that while he was ready for revenge, he now likes the transfer student. The gang leader closes the distance between them. He then makes an unexpected offer, asking Akihito to join him. Akihito gives a blunt and immediate refusal. Ryugo sweetens the deal, offering money, status, and even good food. Akihito seems to consider the offer, but he ultimately decides he cannot accept. Ryugo questions his refusal. Akihito explains that he was promised a hamburger steak. Both Ryugo and Yuki are confused by this simple reason. He then begins to walk away. He turns back with a sharp-toothed grin, reiterating that he will not be joining him. Ryugo's expression darkens with rage. He declares that at this school, all rules are settled with fists. The students erupt in excitement, throwing money into the air as they prepare to bet on the fight. Ryugo lays out the simple rules for their duel. Victory is achieved when one opponent admits defeat. Akihito casually asks if this means the fight doesn't have to be a deathmatch. Ryugo scoffs, explaining that he can't make Akihito his underling if he's dead. A look of understanding crosses Akihito's face, accompanied by a predatory grin. The 2 combatants square off, ready to begin. Without warning, Akihito launches himself into the air with a powerful flip kick. He lands gracefully, his hand immediately reaching for a nearby cinder block. His fingers wrap tightly around the makeshift weapon. The onlookers cry out in protest, accusing the transfer student of fighting dirty once again. He swings the cinder block down with full force, but Ryugo easily dodges the clumsy attack. He then counters with a lightning-fast punch to Akihito's jaw. The transfer student is sent reeling from the impact. The onlookers are stunned, unable to even track Ryugo's movement. They reveal that Ryugo is a former national junior boxing champion. A fighter of his caliber is far beyond any mere amateur. The gang leader settles into a professional boxing stance, but Akihito simply grins, impressed by his opponent's skill. The 2 fighters prepare for the next exchange. Ryugo unleashes a furious barrage of punches, overwhelming the transfer student. Akihito struggles to block the lightning-fast assault. A final, brutal punch connects squarely with his face, sending blood flying. He collapses to the ground, muttering in pain. The gang leader looks on, unimpressed by the display. But Akihito lunges back into the fray with a wild counterattack. He spits a mouthful of blood, his eyes burning with intensity. From the sidelines, Yuki watches in utter disbelief. The crowd erupts, taunting the transfer student and demanding his surrender. Ryugo cracks his neck, telling Akihito not to disappoint him. Akihito wipes the blood from his mouth. He then lunges forward, tackling Ryugo at the legs. The gang leader is caught completely off guard. The crowd watches intently, surprised by the transfer student's sudden move. But Ryugo easily overpowers him, pinning Akihito to the ground by his neck. Akihito struggles, finding himself completely immobilized. Ryugo calmly explains that a boxer's legs are a common target. He demonstrates the simple counter, pressing Akihito firmly into the dirt. But Akihito grins, informing him that he has made a grave miscalculation. From his pinned position, he unleashes a vicious elbow strike directly into Ryugo's temple. Ryugo declares that this is not a boxing match but a street fight. He then brings his foot down, crushing Akihito's hand against the ground. Blood pours from the wound. The transfer student cries out in agony. The onlookers are stunned, wondering why the transfer student is the one screaming in pain. Ryugo calls him a dumbass for his mistake. He confidently states that no fist can ever beat steel. Yuki realizes in horror that Ryugo has rigged his shoes. He then delivers another devastating blow to Akihito's face. As Akihito reels back, Ryugo admits that the transfer student was right. He declares this is not boxing but a street fight as he lands another brutal blow. Yuki believes it is over, seeing Akihito as nothing more than a punching bag. The transfer student kneels, battered and bleeding, as the crowd fears for his life. Yuki cries out his name in desperation. Ryugo approaches, mockingly offering a napkin for the blood. But Akihito dismisses the damage as nothing, much to Ryugo's surprise. He calls out the gang leader for hiding steel plates in his shoes like a common delinquent. He then questions if Ryugo is simply not confident in his own boxing skills. The underlings are enraged by his audacity. Ryugo scoffs, telling the half-dead punk to say whatever he wants. But Akihito simply assumes a boxing stance, confusing his opponent. He begins to shadowbox, practicing a simple 1-2 combination. Ryugo watches with a look of disbelief. The onlookers recognize the familiar movements. Akihito explains that after taking so many hits, he has learned something. With a confident grin, he declares that he has now figured out boxing. The gang leader finds this development interesting. Akihito then charges forward. He unleashes a flurry of punches, mimicking Ryugo's form. But Ryugo effortlessly blocks every strike, telling him his technique is all wrong and offering to give him a lesson. Akihito questions the offer of a lesson. Ryugo begins his instruction, correcting Akihito's stance and telling him to square his shoulders. He then demonstrates the proper form, keeping his elbows tucked in. He advises him to step in firmly to generate power. He explains that the swing should be straight with a light motion. The punch barely misses Akihito's face, who notes how close it was. Ryugo clarifies that a jab is merely a feint. Its true purpose is to create an opening by rotating the lower body. He then demonstrates the final strike, landing a devastating blow. The impact sends Akihito reeling, his face contorted in pain. He explains that this is the basic 1-2 combination. Akihito attempts to replicate the move, but his strikes fail to connect. The onlookers mock his amateurish attempts, certain he can't land a single hit. But Ryugo's fist closes the distance. He lands a devastating counterpunch directly to Akihito's face. The crowd erupts, stunned that he took the counter head-on. Blood drips from the transfer student's mouth. Ryugo looks on, telling him it is time to admit defeat. But Akihito simply looks up, a bloodthirsty and terrifying grin spreading across his face. Akihito's eyes glow with a terrifying, battle-crazed joy. Ryugo is momentarily taken aback by this reaction. Enraged, the gang leader charges forward. He throws another powerful punch, aiming to end it. But this time, Akihito blocks the blow. He stands his ground, perfectly absorbing the impact. The onlookers, including Yuki, are completely stunned by the successful defense. Akihito begins to analyze Ryugo's form, noting his left side and lower body movement. He then thanks his opponent for the lesson, unleashing a perfect mimicry of the 1-2 combination. With a confident grin, he rotates his body, putting everything he learned into the final strike. Ryugo is stunned by the sudden turn of events. The transfer student's fist rushes forward with incredible speed. He realizes the left is just a feint, a clever misdirection. The gang leader is shocked by his opponent's speed. The crowd watches in disbelief as Ryugo is pushed back. Akihito declares that there is no escape from his assault. His fist connects cleanly with Ryugo's jaw. He puts everything he learned into practice, rotating his lower body. The final blow lands with devastating force. The strike lands perfectly, sending a spray of blood from Ryugo's mouth. Akihito grins, asking if he performed the move correctly. The onlookers are in utter disbelief that Mineta Ryugo actually took a hit. Yuki realizes that in just a few moments, Akihito perfectly learned and replicated Ryugo's moves. The gang leader rises to his feet, demanding to know who the transfer student really is. Akihito calmly reveals that he is a criminal. The underlings are completely bewildered by this strange confession. Ryugo snarls, telling the outsider not to butt in without permission. But Akihito's hand suddenly clamps down, grabbing a fistful of Ryugo's hair. He reminds the gang leader that he was the one who picked this fight. He points out that the other students only wanted a normal life, accusing Ryugo of intruding on their peace. With a menacing grin, he vows to punish the gang leader in their place. Ryugo is stunned, questioning why he would go so far for people who are not even his friends. Akihito simply states that it is because he wants to live free. The word echoes in Yuki's mind. Akihito cracks his knuckles, announcing the final round. He declares his intention to finish the fight with a special punch. Enraged, Ryugo vows to kill him. The two combatants charge forward. Ryugo throws the first punch, but Akihito ducks underneath it. He drives a powerful uppercut into Ryugo's gut. He then launches himself upward, delivering a vicious double kick to the gang leader's chin. Ryugo retaliates with a furious punch of his own. The blow lands squarely on Akihito's cheek. but the transfer student's eyes only glow with more intensity. Ryugo unleashes a final, devastating uppercut that connects perfectly. Yuki watches in absolute shock. The gang leader smirks, beginning to declare his victory. But his follow-up punch is stopped cold. Ryugo looks on in disbelief as Akihito effortlessly catches his fist. Akihito's fist connects, delivering his promised special punch. The gang leader grunts in pain, sent stumbling backward. Akihito presses his advantage, leaping over his fallen opponent. Ryugo looks up in a panic, unable to track his movement. He desperately tries to anticipate the next strike, but Akihito is already there, driving a fist into his stomach. The brutal impact sends a spray of blood into the air. The mighty gang leader collapses to his knees. Akihito stands over him, the fight now concluded. The onlookers, including Yuki, can only stare in stunned silence. With a wide grin, he flashes a victorious peace sign.